Hello and welcome to Bangalore International Centre's very own podcast, BIC Talks. Bangalore International Centre is a platform for informed conversations, exchange of ideas, and a space for arts and culture. BIC Talks brings the essence of all that the physical space stands for and more to your doorstep.
What makes a great musician? Can you or anyone become one? Musician and scholar Dr. Sumati Krishnan joins us on BIC Talks today to help us understand the answers to these questions that most of us would have had at some point or the other. Dr. Sumati Krishnan is a musician, trained in both Carnatic classical music as well as Hindustani bhajans, and has been performing for over 18 years. She is also a researcher and a teacher who did her PhD on using Indian classical music varnams for voice training and creativity. She was also on a BIC Streams live event on September 11th this year on the World in Carnatic Music. You can find a link to that recording on the episode webpage on bangaloreinternationalcentre.org. Sumati, welcome to BIC Talks. It's a pleasure to have you on the show.
Thank you, Pawan. Thank you, Bangalore International Centre, for inviting me to speak on the making of a musician.
It's entirely our pleasure to have you on the show, Sumati. So first off, I want to ask you, can anyone and everyone become a musician? Sometimes we feel like it's a gift that we should have, or we talk of it in those terms. How should we be thinking about it?
I have actually always wondered how a musician really evolved. And to understand that, I just want to start by quoting a line from a 13th century work called the Sangeeta Ratnakara. This says, Vidya danena tapasa bhaktya va parvati patehe prabhuta bhagya vibhavaihi sushariram avapyate. Pardon my starting in Sanskrit, but then this is such a profound line. It says, by sharing knowledge, Vidya danam, and also tapas, that is sadhana, and bhakti to Shiva, devotion to the Supreme Lord. Finally, the line that is really interesting is Prabhuta Bhagya Vibhavaihi. It says if you have great fortune, if you are extraordinarily lucky, that is when you can become a musician. And I feel this last line is most interesting because there are musicians who are not so great but who have really made their musical careers. And yet again, there are musicians of great caliber who have not reached anywhere. So, what is it that really makes a successful performer or a musician? It's a question that we really have to analyze.
So there is no secret formula that we can uncover as to what makes a great musician. It can be pure luck.
No secret formula. There is no single path, if you ask me. The goal is the same, but each one's trajectory is totally different. You know, a musician's existence, whether it's during the learning period, during his professional career, it's an eternal quest for knowledge. And if you really study the biography of so many of these musicians, you find one thing in common. There is a struggle. There is a struggle within and a search, a quest for this music. I want to just give you a couple of quick examples. Pandit Bhimsen Joshi, as a child, apparently in their little village, whenever there were some musicians, a procession of musicians going ahead, he would follow the procession. And he would fall asleep under a tree wherever this procession stopped. And very often the villagers would have to bring him back home. So much so that his father wrote on his shirt, son of teacher Joshi, so that they would know where to bring him back home. And the thing is, he was so fascinated by the music of Abdul Karim Khan and Savai Gandharva. So ultimately, he became to be the disciple of Savai Gandharva, and then his career, of course, took off. Similar stories abound in South India also. There's a great musician called Koneri Rajapuram Vaidyanath Iyer. You might have heard of the name. Actually, Papanasham Shivan, who was a great musician of the last century, he wrote many songs in Tamil. He came from Kerala in search of music, and he was so fascinated by Koneri Rajapuram Vaidyanathan, that he would listen to him, follow him everywhere. He was not a student, but he was like a devoted disciple, and he was his Manasika Guru. And he would follow him everywhere, every concert, and imbibe that music. And it is said that Koneri Rajapuram used to sing a lot of Karahara Priya, and therefore Papanasham Shivan has composed a huge lot of Karahara Priya songs. My guru's guru, who was Mudikondan Venkataramayar, learnt under Koneri Rajapuram for a little while. And that is when he too imbibed the very same Karahara Priya, which he composed a Varnam. And this Charanam line is very interesting because it has an archaic usage of Karahara Priya. Like I said, people go in search of gurus, leave everything, their homes, their belongings, their families, and they are ready to be with the music.
So here, Sumati, I wanted to ask a couple of questions. One, do you think the search for music at that young age is critical to becoming a successful musician? Does that have anything to do with how our bodies grow as well? Like if we are training, say, in music through puberty, say when, our voice breaks, does that help a lot with the quality of our voice?
See, you have given me two questions. One is, does one have to start early? Yes, definitely, because this is not just for music, it's for any art, any sports, anything where intense practice is necessary. Starting early is very, very important because they make indelible impressions on the body. Now, because both music and sports and other activities require some physical element in it, music is actually a vocal athlete. The muscular movement of the throat has to be strong. In fact, there is a doctor who told me that the vocal folds of a musician are really very, very strong compared to a normal speaker. So that has to start from the beginning. Similarly, musical training has to start early. Then you talked about puberty, the voice changing. That is a question which usually it's only for the males. The female population do not have that issue. For the boy, there is a break in the voice at that time and they are actually embarrassed singing sometimes because there are cracks in the voice and things like that. That is a period which will pass. But learning has to start early. The transition will happen naturally because it's just like the body, it grows with that. Okay, so that brings me back to the Sangeeta Ratnakara. Molded is the right word. As you said in the previous question, when do they start? So if they start with a clean slate, where the guru does not have to undo anything. Whatever you have learnt in the past, sometimes it may not be what is acceptable in that particular parampara or even what is acceptable in terms of classical music. Because there are so many factors involved. Your voice production, your understanding of the swaras. So molding is very important. Here, the Sangeeta Ratnakara actually starts by Pindotpatti, which is the birth of an embryo and how different body parts, organs develop and a child is born. And then it comes to Nadotpatti, which is origin of sound. Nakaram prananamanam, dakaram analam viduhu. Nakaram is air. Prana is another word for air. The word of nada, the two syllables, na stands for air and da stands for fire. And it is these two elements within our body, even in Ayurveda, it's the same thing. It's these two elements within our body which creates sound production. And a similar thought is echoed by Tyagaraja in his Kriti Moksha Mugulada. He sings Prana Anala Samyogamu Valla Prana Anala Samyogamu Valla Pranava Nadamu Sapta Swaramulai Baraga Veena Vadana Loludu Shiva Mano Veena Vadana Loludu Shiva Mano Vidhameru Garudhyada Raja Vinuta Mokshamu Galada. He says, can anybody get moksha without this music, without this nada that is born of air and fire? So, an aspiring student actually comes to the home of a guru in the molding process. And they live with this guru for many years. It's very interesting, sometimes apparently a guru looks at the horoscope of the student before making sure that they can take them in. Because they need to see whether they have the aptitude or whether they will make it big in the sphere of performance. So they literally live with the guru and live with the music. And there were different types of gurus, some who would not allow them to record or write down music. That was a thing of the past, of course. Today, without writing and recording, very few people can learn. Also, gurus would not teach improvisation because it's supposed to be manodharma, it's supposed to be creative, it was supposed to be individual. And the individual had to work at it and develop it on their own. So this molding process, this creation of a musician who is not a clone of the guru, but an individual artist, that's a long process. It requires commitment, concentrated practice, determination to succeed, opportunities, and of course, luck.
Is there a big role of unlearning as a musician starts becoming more advanced in their career? Maybe from one guru, they might start learning from another guru. Is unlearning also a part of the learning here?
I would put it very simply. When you start learning music, it's good to go to a senior guru. And don't think that I will learn from a neighbor who knows a little bit of music, because it's just the beginning. Because it's just the beginning that matters. Your foundation is important. And once that foundation is there, then changing to suit an individual guru won't be difficult at all. As long as the foundation is fine. I'll simply put it for you in a varnam, say Shankarabharanam varnam. It's sa, ni, sa, da, ni, pa. People can sing it scalar. Sa, ni, sa, da, ni, pa, ma, pa, ma, ga, ma, pa. So they will say, I will introduce gamakas later when the child is more grown up. Then the transition is very, very tough because they tend to sing scalar afterwards. So it's better to go to a good guru from the start. But learning from 2 gurus or 3 gurus or something, that is not an issue, because once you have understood the basics, then molding to whichever way the guru trains you is not hard.
So in the Carnatic classical tradition, Sumati, what are then various aspects of this training to become a musician? I mean, there's voice, there's the music, there are the ragas, there's improvisation and creativity. So how does one approach all that training with the intensity that is necessary?
You have actually answered the question. Basically, there are 2 aspects. One is the voice and the other is creative expression or improvisation. And for both to develop, practice is really essential. There is a line in the Shikshas. I must talk about the Shikshas, which are actually part of the Vedangas. They are texts meant for training for Vedas, reciting the Vedas, basically phonetic sounds and teaching methods. So one of the Shikshas, the Naradiya Shiksha, speaks of Sahasra Gunita Vidya Shatashav Parikirtitaihi. Sahasra means thousand. Something that has been practiced thousands of times and taught hundreds of times. That's what's going to come to you as easily as water flows down a slope. So they make it very clear that practice is very, very essential. This practice, sadhana, riyas, whatever you might call it, that's a very inherent part of achieving effortlessness in performance. See, ultimately, it's not about singing at home. A musician wants to sing in front of an audience, and to sing effortlessly, that much of practice has to be put in. This practice has two dimensions. One is actually the physical practice aimed at achieving excellence in delivery, in voice production. And the other is about thinking, about contemplating and gaining insight into the music, as every phrase and every movement in the song has a meaning. Whether you're singing Raga Alapana, whether you're singing a song, every phrase has a deeper meaning which will come only through practice. Actually, again, I come back to our tradition. It's very interesting that, whatever people learn, they do it for a mandalam. A mandalam is a period of 41 days. Whether it's learning a shloka, whether it's learning a yogic practice or learning music, the idea of practicing continuously for 41 days is actually a tradition of repeated practice and reinforcement of an idea. It starts with one full moon, goes on to the next full moon, and then till the Ekadashi, which is another 11 days. What happens then is integration into the schedule and practice of life. That whatever we repeat many times, it makes a very strong impression on our neural networks, on the brain. And this repetition helps in making music very much part of our lives.
And, I think even from more recent research, people talk about how doing something for 6 weeks is sort of a necessary length of time for it to become a habit. And it's remarkable how similar those time periods are, So it's that making it a part of your routine. And in the classical systems in India, how does one think about the qualities of this musician?
Before that, I just want to mention something relating to how much can a musician learn. My guru, Sangeeta Kalanidhi R. Vedavalli, she used to say that music is like an ocean. And if you go with a cup, that's how much you will receive. If you go with a large pot, that's how much you can carry. So basically trying to say that it depends very much on the individual aptitude, the ability of the student to take in things. And at this time I was talking about the Shikshas. I just want to say a few things about the Shikshas here, going back to tradition, because it's relevant even today. You will find quotations and scientific theory corroborating with these Shikshas. So to study Vedas, one had to train the voice. And for this, they start from the early morning. They say, of course, practice early in the morning is very essential, because that is when the body, the mind is ready to receive, grasp new ideas and to practice. And they say you start by brushing your teeth with Kadir, Karavira, and different sticks are to be used are also mentioned. After that, he says you have to take Triphala, which is an Ayurvedic thing for the voice. And then they say you do mandra sadhana. Mandra meaning in the lower octave, because that will strengthen your higher octave. So all this practice for making the voice powerful. Voice training is not just about speed. It's about breath control, how long you can hold a particular note. It's about volume. It's about the texture, the tonal quality of the voice. It's about the modulation that you can bring into your own voice. The swara shuddhi, the positioning of each note in the particular pitch. So many aspects are there. And probably that will take a separate session altogether. But I want to say, interestingly, this Naradiya Shiksha is actually as 200 BC, the work. But they talk about 22 organs of sound production, starting from the throat, which is the kantha, the cerebrum, murdha, alveola, which is the upper part of the jaw, then the lip, teeth, soft palate, the larynx, swara yantra, the vocal cord, which is the swara tantri, the nasal cavity. In fact, we also produce a sound from our nose during singing. A little bit of a nasal touch makes the music beautiful. And of course, the tongue, jihva. So all the organs of voice production. Today, even science, people who study speech, language pathologies, they study about all these organs of sound production. And this was done so many years ago. So then you asked me about what are the qualities of a musician. Here again, I want to go back to a 12th, 13th century work called Sangeeta Samaya Sara by Parshvadeva. When you look at the qualities of a musician, what are these qualities that one has to possess to successfully perform before an audience? I'm talking more in the light of a performer right now, not just a musician who has technical knowledge or knowledge of the lakshana or grammar, but is unable to perform. So here I am talking about the successful musician who comes in front of the audience, has an interface with the audience. So they say, according to the Samayasara, a good musician is Kriyapara, who sings music faultlessly. Gatishtha, he produces suitable gamakas in a very well-controlled voice. He is Bhavuka, he changes a dry song into a delightful one. He is Ranjaka, he understands what the audience wants. And Pararitignya is one who makes suitable physical actions while singing. If you look at it, it kind of sums up everything. It's a musician who understands what the audience pulse is all about, what the listener wants. And again, they have to make suitable actions. So our actions are permitted. It's not that you have to sit stiff like a dummy, but you move your arms and limbs, but to what extent can you do it, again, is limited. Then they've also listed the faults which are very interesting and relevant to this day. You cannot be sandashta, meaning you can't bite your teeth while singing. Kapila, one who sings notes lower or higher than the accurate pitch. Bhita, one who is nervous. Shankita, unsure. Sanunasika, too much of a nasal tone all the time. Kaki sings like a crow. Karali sings with a wide open mouth. Nimilika keeps his eyes closed all the time. Ushtraka is one who sits like a camel while singing. And Vakri twists his neck while singing. So if you look at all these little characters, they've sometimes compared it to animals. A camel slouches. They don't want you to slouch. Or you don't make the sound like a crow. So all these are the faults of a musician. So they've listed these. But if you really look at it, what are the qualities that need to be developed? I think it has to be a fine blend of understanding the grammar of the music, because without that you'll make a lot of mistakes and you won't stay long enough to sustain yourself. So it's like a language. You need to know you have a vocabulary and the grammar. Just having a vocabulary won't be enough. So your vocabulary would be the understanding of the swaras and everything, knowledge of the shastras, knowledge of how to produce the music, and of course a presence. You need to have a stage presence if you're going to perform in front of an audience.
It's fantastic to hear about a text which not just talks about music and what goes into it, but also the idea of the performance and how to be a good performer and using your body along with your voice to deliver a good performance, right? It's amazing to hear from such an ancient text on the art of the performance as well. So Sumati, can you maybe give us some examples which embody what we've discussed so far from the lives of musicians that some of our listeners might know?
Yeah, actually, many musicians have gone through a journey. And how do we know about this? Some have written about it and some have talked to others, or it's come down through an oral tradition. I want to talk about Mysore Vasudevachar simply because he was a person who lived in the last century and he wrote about fellow musicians of his time. When he was 90 years old, he says, I'm documenting my experiences with other musicians people I have met, people I have learned from, other people who have interacted with over a various period of time. So he writes down in his 90th year, Nan Kanda Kala Viddaru. First it came in Kannada and later on it was translated into English by his grandson. It's called With the Masters of Melody. And he talks about his learning experience. How he wanted to learn from Patnam Subramanian Iyer, who lived in Thiruvayar in South India. And it was the Wadiyar ruler who supported him, gave him money and a letter of introduction and sent him to Thiruvayar to learn from this great guru. Patnam actually was an institution. Others also sent musicians to learn from Patnam Subramanian Iyer. Like the rule, Puchi was sent by the ruler of Ramnad, Puchi Srinivasa Iyengar. So coming back to Mysore Vasudevachar, when he first came to Patnam was happy to receive him because there was a royal order and he saw the letter and he welcomed him. But initially, for nearly a few months, all that Patnam was required to do was to keep the puja vessels, sit with the guru when he practiced, sit with him when he taught other contemporary students, or go with him to concerts. And then finally, one day the guru calls him and tells him, "Look, do you think you're wasting your time here?" He says, "No, actually so far I have taken you round the temple. And now I'm ready to take you to the Garbhagraha, which is I'm going to start teaching you music." And from the very next day, he started teaching him. So Patnam Mysore Vasudevachar says he went to the Kaveri, had a bath, went to the temple and then came back and started his lessons. And what did he start with? Patnam Subramanian Iyer was actually known for his Begada. He was also called Begada Subramanian. And Begada is the name of a raga. It's a beautiful raga in Carnatic music. You know, people actually had the prefix of a raga attached to their names. Like you had Todi Sitaramaya or Begada Subramanian because they sang that particular raga so much that it became part of themselves. So he taught a Varnam in Begada to Patnam Subramanian Iyer. He taught him this Varnam and actually he made him sing it for nearly 3 months. Single line at a time, sometimes up, in the reverse order, whatever. And at the end of it, he told Vasudevacharya that now you know Begada. I don't have to teach you Begada Raga again. You know it so thoroughly. And this was the beginning. But later on, of course, a great friendship developed between the two. And even when Patnam Subramanian Iyer used to compose, he would call Vasudevachar and ask him to look at the lyrics because Vasudevachar was very strong in Sanskrit. He was a scholar. So he would look at the Sahitya and tell him how it was. So that's a different story. But basically, this was the learning process where initially they had to be very, very patient before the blessing came. A similar story of Bidaram Krishnappa. You might have heard of Bidaram Krishnappa. He's a great singer in Karnataka. He was actually a theatre artist. His father, Vishwanathayya, was a theatre artist and they lived in Dharmasthala. And it so happened that during one festival, Mummadi Krishnaraja Wadiyar happened to pass by and he saw this Mandali perform. And his father, Vishwanathayya, used to do the role of Sita, the female role. Those days, men used to play male and female roles. So he used to play the role of Sita and he then invited them to Mysore court. And that's how the family moved to Mysore. But then the father became too old, he couldn't act. And he had 2 sons who were good singers, but they were not trained musicians. So here the question of training arises. And since the father couldn't afford to keep the family, the boys used to go around singing bhajans and they would get some money. People would take pity on them, give them some coins or some money and they would manage to feed the family that way. So they actually struggled for existence. On one occasion, Bidaram Krishnappa, he was sitting in front of the temple and singing when one rich Sahukar noticed him, Timmaya, and he said, "Why are you here? You need to learn good music." And he takes him to a guru. This guru was Karur Ramaswamy, and he learns music, hones his voice, his skills, and comes back as a brilliant musician, both as a drama artist and a musician. So here it was opportunity and luck that came to him in way of a good, generous soul. Also, a person called Nanjundaya helped him get access to the court, because even if you're good, reaching the court was not easy, because there were other musicians who had already established themselves there. So you needed to have a patron or somebody who would support you to come there as well. So fortunately, his life took off from there. So each one has a different trajectory, but ultimately they work really hard, they struggle, but reach their goal. And music after that is something which fulfills your soul.
One question I have in all of this is, there is the musician who knows how to sing and perform well, and they will also have a lot of creativity with how they might sing a given song or explore a given raga. Then there is a separate act of composition of music, some of which you also referred to in the examples that you were sharing. And then there's perhaps innovation with the raga in itself, right? So how do you see various performers and musicians and their roles in all of this? Have they been separate? Have they been combined in individuals? How have you seen this in practice?
See, basically, a great musician need not always be a great composer, for the simple reason, for composition you need to understand language very well. Language, which means poetry, prasa, yati, literature, and Puranic stories, because that's all that comes into our music. But definitely they would know the nuances of the raga, so they would be able to tune some words brilliantly. And you talked about creativity. See, creativity again is not something that is taught, but at the same time, some basics have to be taught before you can be creative, because you're building on what you already know. Without a foundation, you cannot build something beautiful even on top of it. So this creative urge is something which blossoms very suddenly. See, it's an unexpected twist, or it's an idea which suddenly comes out of the blue, and even the musician himself doesn't realize that such a beautiful phrase has come out of him. So that creative urge is there. That is, I'm talking about raga alapana. Then there are, of course, creative ways of looking at a raga, creating new ragas, creating compositions which are beautiful. And one very, very important aspect is learning from a guru. Because, you might learn from other sources, but your technical devices will never be able to tell you where you have gone wrong or what are the nuances of music. There's nobody to correct you if you go wrong. So I think they can just be used as an aid. I'll give you a very simple example. If you look at a raga like Bhairavi, I don't want to sound very technical, but Bhairavi has two das, the Shuddha Da and the Chatushruti Da. So if you sing Bhairavi, without going to the upper reaches Sa, you're supposed to stop with the Shuddha Daivatam. And this only if you go to a good guru, you will know the difference. So, at first I used the Shuddha Daivatam. Da pa ma pa da pa ga ri ga ma pa da pa, and then a slightly higher Daivatam called the Trishruti Daivatam. Ma pa da pa da ni da pa. And then if you need to go to the Tara Shadjam, straight from Panchamam, you can even use the same Daivatam or go to the Chatushruti Daivatam. Tadari na pada or Dani Sarisa Nayana. And all this you can learn only from a guru. These subtle differences can be made clear only by somebody who is very experienced in this music.
This can only be achieved when you're working closely with a guru or a teacher.
Exactly. You have to closely observe, and often when you can't get there, they will tell you, okay, please correct it here, hold it little lower, hold it little higher. So those subtle but intuitive guidance is important.
Thank you so much for sharing this context and history of how the classical music approach in India has looked at the art and the training and what makes a musician. What do you think is the current state of Carnatic music here? You've been practicing for the last 18 years. How are we doing right now in terms of development of the art and producing, truly creative and talented musicians?
Today's scene is entirely different. There are many more Ekalavyas and Manasika gurus. Today, the learning teaching process has also changed. There's a lot of dependence on electronic devices. And with the COVID situation that has come to stay, I think we have to make the most of whatever is available to us. Among the youth, there is a lot of passion to learn. There is drive and commitment and eagerness to succeed, to perform, to be in front of an audience. However, these electronic devices can never substitute real human interface with the teacher. That is why students across the globe, they try to come back to India at least for a short while to be with the gurus and to imbibe something more than just learning a composition or some Manodharma over the YouTube, Zoom classes or Skype for that matter. Core music is really very tough and only the very resilient reach there. Others diversify halfway, try some collaborative work, they try singing in multiple genres, etc. But one thing we should realize that what we are gaining from a guru is not just a transference of knowledge. It is a transfer of intuitive methods of understanding the music. In fact, today the knowledge sharing platform has completely changed. And we gain some, we lose some. Earlier we used to keep much more in our memories. Today it's all in some hard disk drive or some other memory device. We store away some music and say we'll learn it later, but that later sometimes never comes. But that apart, we have access to music no matter where we are. We are not handicapped because we live in a different continent or country. We can access music from wherever we are. We can learn, we can follow with passion our heart's desire and definitely become a successful musician in the years to come. I wish all these young musicians all the very best.
So Sumati, we've been largely talking about Carnatic music, the South Indian classical music traditions, right? How similar or different do you think it would be with the Hindustani traditions and with Western traditions of music and how people learn them?
Actually, Hindustani music in many ways will be similar because it's a melodic music. And again, the training from a guru, ustad is paramount. What they do again to have a Gurukula Vasam, they have a ceremony called a Ganda Bandhan where the student is accepted by the guru for a period of time. And performing is only after the guru permits, when they feel you are ready to sit on the stage. But Western music, I think the case, I don't know too much about it, but unlike Hindustani and Carnatic classical music where it is individual musicians who perform, Western music very often is a group effort. So they can be choral music or they can be large orchestra. So practicing with a group may become important in that sense. The practice may not be so much individual, but at the same time, the individual musician themselves, a violinist or some cello player, they might have to practice their pieces separately, but they have to come back together. And there again, a lot of written down music is there, unlike in our music where it's not so written down and you will have to write it down yourself on the spur of the moment. So that I think is the basic difference. But everywhere certain common factors are there. The urge to learn and the basic passion for music and putting your heart and soul into it to take it forward. That is common for everyone, no matter what the genre of music.
Sumati, thank you so much for joining us on BIC Talks and really helping us understand a lot more about the practice and the training that goes into classical music. We've recently been having episodes on Beethoven and Western classical music, and I'm glad that we were able to record this first of hopefully many episodes exploring various aspects of Indian classical music. In closing, Sumati, any concluding thoughts or a song for us?
Thank you, Pawan. First of all, I'm so happy and proud that this is the first Carnatic music podcast that you're having, and I am part of it. And I would like to close with a song by Purandaradasa, where he sums up all the requisite characters of a musician. He speaks of the person requiring rhythm, a quiet place where the music can be heard, a good voice, devotion to God, above all.
Thank you for listening in till the end. Please share this episode with a friend on social media, WhatsApp, or anywhere else. It would mean the world to us. And in case you're listening via iTunes or Apple Podcasts, please leave us a rating and a review. Subscribe to BIC Talks on email or your favorite podcast app and don't miss out on future episodes. This episode of BIC Talks has Gaurav Krishna as our sound engineer with support from S. Sarvanaraj and Lekha Naidu. And the accompanying episode artwork was made by Chandni Venkataraman.
Thank you for listening to this episode of BIC Talks. This podcast can be accessed on our website, bangaloreinternationalcentre.org, as well as on any of your favorite podcast platforms. Tune in for new episodes every week. And do subscribe to our YouTube channel and follow our Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram pages to stay informed on our latest updates.